What would you say is the most important guiding principle to use when you're putting together a retirement travel budget? Is it to meet your travel goals while spending as little money as possible, or is it to meet your travel goals while spending as much money as possible? Well, you might say, what a stupid question. Of course, it's to meet my travel goals without spending more money than I absolutely have to. So it's as little as I can. But think about this. One approach comes from a position of scarcity, whereas the other position comes from a position of abundance. So you're going to reach the same result when you put a travel budget together, but your mindset will be different. So you're just coming in from a different direction. So in this video, I want to give you some tools you can use when you plan your next travel budget and how you can make the whole budgeting process painless and actually fun, and think of it from a standpoint of abundance. So let's get right into this. Planning your retirement travel budget and having a great travel experience can be broken down into 4 easy steps. So step 1, I bet you can't imagine what that is. Well, I'll tell you. How much money do you have for travel, say for next year, for example? As retired travelers, we have a pretty good idea what our income will be each year and how much of our savings or investments that we can safely withdraw, plus whatever money we have coming in from Social Security or pensions or any other source. So we then just look at the expense side and determine how much of our income will go to non-discretionary items and which go to discretionary. So let's assume we're not full-time travelers and we still maintain a home somewhere. So obviously, those non-discretionary expenses are going to be for rent, mortgage, home maintenance, property taxes, landscaping, whatever it is that you'll have with your house. Then there's also auto expenses, groceries, medical, any of those other costs that we simply can't get out of. So you take those and you subtract those from our total, and then you get what is our discretionary spending or discretionary income. Either way you want to look at it, because we're going to spend our income. In this case, our discretionary income is going to go for travel. So on YouTube, I don't know if you're like me, but I hear a lot of early retired travelers talking about how they want to spend as little money as they can, and they're getting by on sometimes $40,000, sometimes $50,000 a year, and they're traveling full time. Well, if you can do that, that is great. But if you're like a lot of us, where we're not traveling full time, we still have a home to take care of, or a home base to take care of wherever we are, then our planning will be different. We also probably have a little more money than that early retiree couple would have at $40,000 to $50,000 a year. And what it comes down to is what becomes abundant and scarce is the resources may be more abundant, but the time that we have left to travel becomes more scarce. So you've got abundance versus scarcity again. So, okay, what I'm saying is, of course, we do get to that same result at the end, but it's just kind of a mindset. All right, so here we go. The second step is know what your travel style is. And you have to always ask yourself, are we more comfortable being a budget traveler, a mid-range traveler, or a luxury traveler? Well, and what does that really exactly mean? Well, it can mean different things in different locations, because things obviously cost more in different parts of the world than in others. But here is a rule of thumb that you can use. This is what I use. You can adjust it however you want, but this is a good way of looking at it, is that if you're a budget traveler, you're going to be spending between $50 and $150 per day per person. If you're a mid-range traveler, you're going to be spending between $150 and $300 a day per person. And if you're a luxury traveler, it's going to be $300 or more per person per day. Now, you can question whether these figures make any sense to you, but like any rule of thumb, it's as good as any, and it's a good place to start. Obviously, your traveling style will change remarkably depending on where you are. If you're traveling to Europe or North America, those are expensive places, so you may have to settle for maybe a lower mid-range. If you're traveling in Asia, you might be able to pump that up into the luxury range. So it just kind of depends how much you've got. Step 3, how much should you budget per day of travel? This is really the fun step, and you've got 2 dependent variables here, time and money. Now, if, for example, you know you're going to travel 6 months out of the year and you know you have a set amount of money to do that in, you simply divide that money by the number of days you're traveling to get how much you can spend per day. Pretty simple. But let's look at a couple of examples here. Jack and Jill are younger. They have saved up for a long-awaited trip from the United States to Europe. And they have a travel budget of $20,000. Pretty healthy, but they've been saving up for this trip. They can get away for only 3 weeks. They're both working. So $20,000 divided by 21 days is $952 a day, or $476 per day per person. Well, that's super. They can go in luxury, and even if they spend $5,000 of that $20,000 budget for a business class airfare, that's still $15,000 left divided by 21 days. That's $714 a day, or $357 per person. Well, they're certainly in the luxury category, and they can probably have just a wonderful time going to very nice hotels, nice restaurants. It's going to be fabulous. Okay, now let's go to example 2. Bob and Barb are retired travelers who have more time than money. You'll notice Bob and Barb look a lot like Jay and Tanya. There's no not intended to be any similarity at all, but it just happened to turn out that way. Bob and Barb know that they can spend $90,000 next year on travel. Their goal is to travel as many days as they can on that amount of money. Now, they're not real picky about where they go. They just want to take that 90 grand and see how long they can make it last. They'd like to go to Europe, but they also like South America, and they've always enjoyed the times that they've traveled to Asia, which they know is a cheaper location in general. Bob and Barb are mid-range travelers, and while they can live with budget travel, they'd really rather not. How many days they can travel next year without running out of money is the big question that they want to ask themselves. So one easy way to approach this is to take a mid-range budget of $250 a day per person, so that's $500, divide that into their $90,000 budget. Well, that's 180 days. So they could travel for 6 months and all would be fine. Now, they could travel all year if they were budget travelers by spending half that much, $125 per day per person, for example. They'd probably still be happy. Now, Bob and Barb just need to determine now where they could go to make their money go the furthest and how they can travel the longest that they can. Here are some examples. None of these examples I'm going to show you in terms of locations include airfare to get there, so you always have to take that into consideration. The numbers I'm going to give you for different locations are from the website budgetyourtravel.com and are supposedly based on costs incurred by other travelers. For example, Armenia would cost $37 per day per person. This is all mid-range. Albania, $94 a day. Romania, $99 a day. France, $275 a day per person per day. Switzerland, $336 a day per person. Now, if you go to a place like Vietnam, $69 a day. It's and this is all mid-range. Cambodia, $74 a day. Thailand, $98 a day. Bolivia, $63. Mexico, $123. Uruguay, $86 a day. So, if you put that into perspective, Bob and Barb could take their $90,000 for mid-range travel and they could spend either 134 days, less than 6 months, in Switzerland, or they could spend all year in virtually any of those other locations. Something to think about. Or they could split it up a little bit. Step 4. How much of your travel budget will be spent on different categories? So this is another rule of thumb that we like to look at and help us to figure out, okay, what percentage of the money that we're going to spend goes to different sections. Okay, so for example, transportation, including air, generally will make up about 40% of your travel budget. Lodging, 25%, food, 20%, and entertainment miscellaneous, 15%. Now, these proportions of your travel budget can be really interesting to keep in mind because obviously if you spend a lot of money getting to a location, it's a cheaper destination, the transportation part will go up, but the other categories will be down. Your food and lodging will more likely be more inexpensive. Conversely, you can get a cheap flight to Europe, your proportion of expenses on food and lodging may go up. Or if you're traveling somewhere to see a specific event, like you're going to a Taylor Swift concert somewhere, you might have to adjust some of your other expenses because your entertainment and miscellaneous expense is going to be higher. So you see what I mean. Another category for travel budgeting can be the amount that you spent on cruises. Now, I didn't include cruises in this because it takes a little more work if you're trying to determine which proportion goes to travel and which goes to food and which goes to miscellaneous. But on the other hand, cruise expenses can be easier to figure out in your total travel budget because you have a pretty good idea how much your cruise is going to cost. So, I hope that this little exercise helped you in planning your travel budget for 2025. We did another video on travel budgeting in retirement a few years ago, and check it out here if you'd like to see that. Have a wonderful year in 2025 of traveling, and congratulations for looking at the process in terms of abundance rather than scarcity, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.